It's a privilege, it's an honor to be able to come to this committee and testify on what impacts we believe consumers may very well face if Congress does, in fact, adopt energy or climate policies.
What should we ask of our public policymakers, our regulators, and the industry? Of these individuals, we should ask that they join us, work with us hand in hand, help us to establish a better tomorrow, and as a result, create, rather than minimize, our energy options and creating a strict energy portfolio that they provide us with a wide array of options.
I just think it's wise to have a flexible definition of what's going to be allowable. If you're going to truly look at reduction of CO2 emissions, then you have to be flexible. You have to look at nuclear, you have to look at hydro, you have to look at the plethora of opportunities that are out there and be flexible in your decision making, rather than to prescribe a defined set of sources and say you've got to choose one of these, but you're going to choose one of these regardless of cost. I think ultimately the consumer pays for that type of short-sightedness.
Now that we're trying to put this energy package together, and you look and says, how do you deal with the renewable electricity standards? And if you look at what we were doing in the outset, they were looking at wind and solar, a little bit of biomass, but no nuclear. And so you said to a state like South Carolina, where 54% of the energy that we create in that, we generate in that state, is in fact nuclear. How do you do that? And so we were meeting on these are very serious issues that we have to meet.
I wish they would stop and think of how many people's lives are going to be affected.
We don't have a lot of solar here in the Southeast. We don't have a lot of wind. What we do have, what does work today, that produces absolutely no emissions, is hydroelectricity and nuclear, and yet the bill doesn't concentrate at all on those sources.
We don't have any wind or solar like they do out west, so we feel like it's going to cost us a lot of jobs here in the South by not having either one of those.
Nuclear, another emission-free resource. Not really paid much attention to in this legislation.
Anything that makes the United States less competitive with other foreign countries is definitely not in the best interest of the United States.
I would ask, as a citizen, I would ask my senators to really pay attention to the unintended consequences that this legislation may well have.
If this energy legislation is really about carbon emissions and climate change, we can't just talk about renewable. We have to talk about sources that don't produce any carbon emissions. So hydroelectricity, for example, nuclear energy, is technically not renewable, but it is emission-free. So a country like France is 80% nuclear, 20% hydro. They're a net exporter of energy in Europe. We should be looking at those kind of models.
People in the South, the Southeast, many parts of the Midwest, simply don't have the renewable resources that are defined in this narrowly defined bill.